Integration really becomes the engine for the automation. And we can replace a lot of manual work with automated flows between systems with integration. So a great example of this is we had a client that was heavily utilizing their ERP for order management. And we were able to effectively integrate their CRM with that ERP to save them multiple hours of work per order because we were able to reduce the amount of manual typing, like reentry that they were having to do. So that integration it fueled them to be able to automate their processes and ultimately was able to save them a ton of time, make them more efficient.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped hundreds of growing businesses build scalable systems on the HubSpot and Salesforce platforms. To learn more, visit fastslowmotion.com. Welcome to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we teach you how to build a business you love while enjoying your life. In today's episode, I'm joined by none other than Fast Slow Motion CTO Chad Seals. And today, Chad is going to be guiding us through the topic of how to integrate key business systems. So Chad, welcome once again to the podcast. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Sam. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, look, let's start with the basics. Chad, how do you actually define integration?
Yeah, at its core, integration is just the process of connecting two or more software systems so that they can work seamlessly together. So what we mean when we say integrations, we're talking about connecting your CRM, your ERP, your marketing tools, literally everything that can communicate and share data back and forth, essentially creating a more cohesive system. And there are several types of integrations that we'll get into, native, API-driven, third-party tools like Middleware. But there's even manual integration methods like exporting and importing data between systems.
And there's nothing wrong with starting simple, right? So sometimes we even recommend clients begin with a manual integration until they're ready for a more automated setup. Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely. We recommend a phased approach. So we like to start with manual exports, maybe leveraging something like a flat file that we can then import into a system. That can be the ideal first step because it's all about making sure that your systems are well adopted before you jump into automation and integration, because we can always scale up to the more complex integration methods like APIs or middleware when the time is right.
Okay, so let's dive straight into how integration ties into the scalable business framework. Our listeners by now should be familiar with our framework: processes, automation, and visibility. But how does integration really play a role here?
Yeah, integration really touches each of the pillars. So let's start with processes. To effectively integrate systems, you need well-defined processes in place. So without these, you're just going to create chaos. I remember working with a client who was using spreadsheets and Google Calendar to track their field service work. They couldn't see their capacity and they had no way to really plan effectively. So first we moved them to Salesforce Field Service, where they could actually visualize their entire process and then plan their capacity. And that foundational process then allowed us to integrate with Verizon, which allowed them to accept new work orders. So this is just one perfect example of building integration on top of well-established and well-adopted processes.
So it sounds like integration then is almost like a reward for getting those processes right.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Integration really becomes the engine for the automation. And we can replace a lot of manual work with automated flows between systems with integration. So a great example of this is we had a client that was heavily utilizing their ERP for order management. And we were able to effectively integrate their CRM with that ERP to save them multiple hours of work per order because we were able to reduce the amount of manual typing, like reentry that they were having to do. So that integration allowed them, it fueled them to be able to automate their processes, and ultimately was able to save them a ton of time, make them more efficient.
So could you walk us through a scenario where automation actually introduced more problems than solutions due to poorly defined processes?
You want to be certain that you have the right processes in place before you automate them, right? Before you leverage an integration to bring the systems together. But it's inevitable. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. You're going to need to re-architect your process. And that does happen. But the way that we mitigate that risk, the way that we prevent it from spending too much time and money on one approach, is we work iteratively. And so what that means is we try and take the smallest chunk of value, like how much value can we get out of the minimal amount of integration work that we can do, and then you see what the results are. Right. So maybe the first, and that's why we talk about that there are different types of integrations. We're going to get into this, but maybe that first approach of that flat file import, well, that's your first path of integration. So what we've done there is we've prevented building out the more complex, the more elaborate integrations, because we weren't certain of our operation side. We weren't certain our processes were well defined enough to support it. And then there are times when you build the integration and you begin running and you recognize, oh, I need to shift. I need to change my process. Well, if you keep those small iterative chunks of work tight enough, then that allows you to kind of change, to iterate, to move, to be what we would call is agile. And so our process of working in small iterative chunks allows us to make those kinds of changes where if you did pick the wrong process to integrate, the wrong process to automate, you are afforded the opportunity to change that without being detrimental to the business.
Okay, so we've covered processes, automation. Let's dive into visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So integration is going to transform your ability to have visibility into your business. It's going to do that by unifying the data across your system into a single source of truth or a single pane of glass. So instead of working with scattered, siloed information, everything becomes centralized. It becomes accessible. So one of our clients was struggling with inventory management. They had no clear way of knowing what was in stock or what they needed or when they needed to reorder because their inventory and their invoicing were handled separately in their financial tool. So after transitioning them to a CRM, we were able to integrate those two tools, and that unlocked real-time insights into both inventory and sales. So this ensured that they had the right products, the right inventory available to them at the right time. So integration is all about empowering business leaders to have the visibility that they need to make smarter and faster decisions.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's talk about the different levels or types of integration that businesses might encounter.
Sure. You can really think about integration in three different levels, three different types. The first would be a basic integration. And this is typically going to be your native integration. It's a custom built integration by a software provider to work in a certain way to solve a certain problem. So think about syncing your CRM with your marketing platform. Think about leveraging maybe like a DocuSign with your CRM. So it's purpose built by the provider. It's straightforward, it's effective, and it's easy to use, ready to use right out of the box. Well, then the next phase or the next step, the level of integration would be a manual integration. So this is when we move beyond the native integration. Maybe one's not available for the integration that you're looking for. And these are going to be a bit more complex. And so what we would recommend is to leverage a manual or like a scheduled export or import style integration. So for example, we might manually export data out of one system and then manually import it into another, or we could use something like a scheduled flat file import. And so this can be done so that it's a manual means by which to actually connect, to integrate the two systems, but it's still manual. Well, then the final step is just really the advanced integration. And this is what, when you are talking about integration, this is typically what you think. It's an integration through APIs, through a custom integration means, or through middleware like MuleSoft. And the reason that we would even use middleware like MuleSoft is they often have connectors that make that integration process easier because they understand commonly why the integration exists. And so these connectors help facilitate data mapping and streamline the processes. And in that advanced integration, it's significantly more complex than the manual integration and significantly more complex than the native integration because it is custom. It's purpose built to solve the specific business problems of the business building the integration. And so lastly, I just wanted to mention the fast slow motion integration framework. So we've developed our own integration framework to help standardize our integration projects. So when we have the need to build that advanced integration between two or more systems, the framework includes core components that you need to actually do that work, like authentication, endpoint configurations, even reusable metadata. And so what it does is it helps our integration projects be more efficient, more effective, and ultimately easier for our clients to maintain them. This means faster time to value, improved data accuracy, and simplified ongoing support for our clients.
So Chad, it sounds like it's really important to choose the right level of integration. So how do you make the decision to integrate instead of just replacing that system with a platform?
Oh, that's a great question. So it is very important to choose the right type of integration. Well, it's also important to choose the right type of system to perform the process, the operation that the business needs. So a business may be leveraging an external system like an ERP effectively, because that external system was purpose built to solve a specific problem, a specific way. And if a business is effectively leveraging that system, what they first need is visibility. They need to put some operations, a process around having that visibility. And that's where integration can help. So you can bring that data from the external system where the data is being captured, where those processes are currently live, bring it into the system where you're performing your visibility, your processes, your automation, your analysis, right? And then that gives you your first step. And then with platforms like Salesforce or HubSpot, we know that over time, as you grow and scale your business, you may absorb those processes onto the platform. You may build the things that exist externally. You may build the processes and the operations, the automation necessary to support that right within the CRM. And that's oftentimes a great solution. And that's what we're building towards. But in the interim, between where we're going and where we are, integration will provide you that single pane of glass, that visibility that you couldn't have otherwise.
Do you have any real world examples of this sort of thing? Like how have our clients benefited from these integration strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our clients was struggling with a CRM implementation. Not adopting their CRM well. So we had to revisit and fix their operational processes within the CRM and relaunch the CRM internally and drive and build adoption. But then once we had solid processes in place and we had good adoption, we were able to integrate their CRM with their payroll and timekeeping solution, which allowed them to automate their employee tracking, their payroll processing, and really to reduce the manual errors that they were seeing because they were having to do duplicative work. This was a major efficiency boost for them. But that integration win was only possible because we first resolved their poor CRM implementation, their lack of adoption. So you solve your operational processes first, and then you build upon that with integration.
Okay, so I love that. So it's process first, then integration is the cherry on the top. Do you have any other examples?
We have a client they're a family-owned business that sells plants. and they partnered with QVC to offer this unique flower. So their technology landscape was all over the place. It was fragmented. They had orders from QVC. They had direct sales through Magento into their website and then ultimately into their ERP. And then they used Zendesk for customer service. None of these systems were connected. So we started by getting them out of Zendesk and migrating them into Salesforce Service Cloud. And that allowed their service team to begin working and become more efficient and adopt the tool. And so then in the next phase, we integrated their ERP with that service instance. And then in the next phase, we were able to integrate their systems with Magento. So they were able to process, their service team was able to process replacement orders. And so it was a very phased approach. And the phased approach allowed for the operations to be defined and well adopted and have a good experience for the end users and a great experience for their customers. And it allowed them to eliminate just tons of time that they were spending on duplicative manual entry into all of these different systems. So the entire process has become more scalable, and it's allowed them to focus less on their systems and more on their growth.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. I also know that we have a great example of a HubSpot integration that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely. We worked with a company offering financial operations services. So everything from like bookkeeping to CFO advisory services. And we were leveraging Make as an integration platform between HubSpot, Xero for accounting, and Carbon HQ for their project management. So we had to build a ton of custom objects, calculated properties, and workflows to deliver this custom solution. But by syncing, by integrating their companies, their contacts, their invoices, their time entries, and really even some more things, we provided them with a system that allowed them to effectively plan and predict profitability of their services. So it was a very complex setup, but the result was a unified system that provided them incredible visibility and actionable insight in a single system.
So, Chad, how does AI fit in all of this? AI and integration seem like they're becoming increasingly linked.
Yeah, they really are. To build an effective AI system, you need good data. Good data is the fuel for AI. And good data comes from solid integration. And this is especially true with advanced AI techniques like retrieval augmented generation or RAG, where the AI is informed by your personalized data. So if we can integrate data from multiple sources, from multiple systems like customer interactions, sales data, and then data from external APIs, we give the AI the context that it needs to generate accurate, relevant insights. So integration is the key to feeding your AI systems with quality data and then keeping that data current and valuable for the AI.
Chad, so many of our customers are interested in AI and gathering the sort of data you would need to really use AI well. So where should they start building that data infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. Let me tell you a story. So this year, I have been training for an Ironman. When I started, I began with a plan that was pretty generic. It provided me guidance for like how can I generally be successful with an Ironman. I have 8 months or so. That's about the amount of time. I have so many hours per week. It gave me generalized guidance. And I went according to that plan for a month or two. Well, a month or two in, I had a conversation with an Ironman coach. And that coach took my general plan, but then asked me questions about my own training, my availability, where I live, the climate, the ability for me to get out, and the amount of time that I could actually spend on the bike. And see, my coach personalized the plan. And so the general plan was helpful, but the personalized plan exponentially was more helpful because it was unique to me. And so the reason that I tell you that story, Sam, is because this is also true with where we are with generative AI. In that AI that doesn't know a ton about you can be helpful. It can be beneficial, and it's a fantastic place to start. But if you want truly helpful AI, it needs to be context aware. It needs to know more about you and your business and your customers. So how do you get started on that journey of informing AI about who you are and your customers? And it's ensuring that you have that data in a platform that is accessible to AI. So you begin with platform. You have well-defined processes on that platform that captures the data that you need. And if your data is in disparate systems, you know where the data lives and the integration means that are available to you to pull that data in. And so the where to start is begin with what's helpful today. AI without the personalization is helpful. Begin using it. Begin getting value out of what's available to you today, and then grow incrementally as you can with the processes that you've defined on the platform, with the data that you have about yourself, with the data that you have about your customers, and then begin pulling in that data from external systems to make the AI more and more context aware and essentially more effective and more tailored to you.
Chad, this has been incredibly insightful. If you had one key takeaway for our listeners today, what would it be?
Integration is a powerful driver for growth, but it is critical for you to get the foundation right first. So start with your processes and then add automation thoughtfully and use integration to provide visibility. It's a journey, and it's one that pays off well when done correctly.
Chad, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, that's it for today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed hearing Chad talk about business systems and when laid on the right foundation can create a powerful driver for growth for your business. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or you can find archived episodes at fastslowmotion.com/podcast.